The end of Warcraft.
13 years ago, one of the most brutal events in Warcraft took place. During the peak of the faction conflict between the Horde and the Alliance in Mist of Pandaria, Garrosh Hellscream made sure to sow hatred between the two factions in the neutral city of Dalaran. Tensions were already high between the sub-factions in the city. The Silver Covenant and the Sun Reavers represented the Alliance and the Horde, but High Elves and Blood Elves weren't always opposed to each other. Because before the Burning Crusade, the High Elves left the elven city of Quotha because their prince, who was a bad guy, was teaching the citizens how to suck magic from living things to satiate their addiction. But if they didn't satiate their addiction, they wouldn't die. They were just addicts, and the High Elves thought that was messed up, so they left. But physically, there's no difference between Blood Elves and High Elves other than their eyes, and also they have cultural differences. But ignore everything I just said, because Varisa and other High Elves left Quotha for totally different reasons after the Second War, because Quotha dropped out of the Alliance, but Varisa and the other High Elves wanted to stay in the Alliance because we need High Elf units for humans in Warcraft 3. Okay, so the Sunwell. Quotha had this thing called the Sunwell, but that was destroyed during the invasion of Quotha. But it was different from the Sunwell that was reinvigorated at the end of the Burning Crusade. No. This version of the Sunwell actually had different magic, and it actually came from a different well called the Well of Eternity. But that well doesn't exist anymore because of an event that happened 10,000 years ago during the War of the Ancients, which is also a book series, and the first two books of the series came out before World of Warcraft even released. But this book series, it's super important because it lays out the events leading to the world-altering event called the Sundering, and oh my god.
That is why Warcraft lore used to be so fucking cool. That right there. Like, there's so much. That's just one race on one part of the history. Like, that right there, that makes World of Warcraft.
I'm talking about the Sundering again. You know what? No. I'm done with this Warcraft lore bullshit. Instead of telling you about the Sundering, I'm just gonna play every single time I've talked about the Sundering on this channel at once, because I just can't be bothered anymore. In the Mist of Pandaria, a quest line called the Purging of Dalaran took place. An event where the Sun Reavers were slaughtered or exiled from the city by the Silver Covenant. And it wasn't until midnight, 13 years later, that this storyline was revisited and met its conclusion. But for this questline to make any sense or have any emotional impact on the player, they need the required context to know all of this in a questline from 13 years ago.
See, another thing is why retail doesn't really follow up with the same type of things and the same type of feel is because a lot of the players that did that or know about that are no longer here. It's a completely different player base. They know different types of lore, or they don't know any lore at all. So
I really want to stress that 13 years ago, I was 13 years ago. I was in middle school.
Platinum WoW was only 26.
We were all doing the Harlem Shake. During this questline, the Silver Covenant is allowed back into the city to help defeat the Void Invasion. Afterwards, they make a compromise and combine the Silver Covenant and the Sun Reavers into one singular faction called the Silver Sun Compact.
Varisa and I have decided that our people can no longer afford to fight each other.
I agree to this compact, though I will never forgive the Horde for what it has done.
As I will never forgive the Alliance for purging us from Dalaran.
True, never.
Yet, I too agree to this compact. We cannot greet the future without saying farewell to the past.
See, this is I don't know, like sometimes you're allowed to hold a grudge. Just sometimes you're allowed to hold a grudge. Man, come on. Come on, sometimes it's okay to be annoyed that your race, your faction, your people was slaughtered. Sometimes it's okay. I understand why. Now, people that come in later in your life, they shouldn't be dealt with the same. But I get it. Sometimes it's okay.
But why? Why is Blizzard taking the narrative in this direction? What is this? World of Friendship craft?
Yeah.
No!
Yeah.
To understand why the narrative is being taken in this direction, we need to talk about the massive obstacle that is in the way of Warcraft telling good stories. For a majority of
The
World of Warcraft's
developers.
history, its lore has been unfocused. Each expansion has been wildly different in subject matter, with
Yeah.
only the faintest connections between each bombastic, disconnected continuation of its story. But with this scattershot
Okay, I don't
approach
agree, but
comes
okay.
a wide breadth of lore that is required to understand when topics are reintroduced with an expansion's worth of lore that separate the start and end of a character's story.
Rip.
The only realistic way for a new or casual player to understand the story is either read a collection of 4 history books explaining the entire universe, read the wiki, or go watch a video explaining the lore on YouTube.
This is the biggest truth in the world. Like the lore in World of Warcraft is told by by lore content creators. That's how it's told. That's how I know the lore. Majority. Obviously, I play the game as well, but like majority of the lore is told by external users.
This disjointed approach in World of Warcraft can also be seen in the game's design. Features for expansions were built, iterated, and ultimately scrapped over and over again.
The feature cycle.
Garrisons, artifact weapons, war fronts, the Heart of Azeroth, and covenants all met their inevitable end once the next expansion was released. It wasn't until Dragonflight when we saw a philosophical shift in the game's design. Instead of a flashy new feature built for one expansion and one expansion only, there was an investment in the core fundamentals of World of Warcraft's design. Since then, we've seen features like dynamic flying, talent trees, professions, auction house revamp, cross-faction gameplay, warbands, delves, UI changes, and most impactful of all, housing. A massive core pillar of gameplay being introduced in Midnight. World
Housing
of
was good.
Warcraft is currently
Technically, it
being
wasn't good,
made
though.
with the goal of setting the MMO up for success for the next 20 years. And the same thing is happening to the game's lore, which is desperately trying to recover from the sins of its past. Because from 2014 to 2020, the A-plot of World of Warcraft has kind of been a hot mess. And the peaks and valleys of the game's lore is directly correlated to the juggling of creative directors World of Warcraft has been fumbling through. The creative director for World of Warcraft from
The GOAT himself. Now he's come back, but he is. Chris Metzen was, probably still is, a complete nerd for fantasy. Like this is what you need by like a developer. Do you know what I mean?
2004 to 2016 was Chris Metzen, the artistic mind that founded Warcraft. He would step down from his leadership role in 2016 after being burnt out having to manage World of Warcraft, the Warcraft movie, and the failed Project Titan. The last thing Chris was involved in
Fair enough.
was the Legion expansion and the cinematic for Battle for Azeroth. Creative director Alex Afasarabi took Chris's place of a leadership
This guy fucked over a lot of people. If I remember right, this guy was single-handedly fucking everything over.
role in 2016. Afasarabi was allegedly known to be very proud of treating every WoW expansion like it was the last WoW expansion, which is great, you know, until you have to
Technically.
make the next WoW expansion. Furthermore, he was allegedly the leading voice in pushing the Burning of Teldrassil event in the Battle for Azeroth.
That's good. That is
Much to
good.
the distaste of the rest of the narrative team. Despite his push for this story beat, he had no idea what the conclusion of the Burning of Teldrassil, or Sylvanas' story, would be. He would later be quietly fired from Blizzard June of 2020 for sexual misconduct.
And again, it makes sense why he wanted chaos, because he was an asshole.
Steve Denuser, a fellow narrative designer, needs to find a way to continue this story he just inherited. Shadowlands comes out and its lore is heavily criticized by the player base. November 28th, 2022, the Dragonflight expansion comes out and its story's a good refresher, but still has some issues.
A lot
December
of issues, in my
15th,
opinion.
2022. Chris Metzen comes back as a creative advisor for World of Warcraft. When Chris rejoined,
The hero.
the team was already 10 months into the development of The War Within. During his time as an advisor, he takes a look at the story plans of WoW for the next 2 expansions, and he doesn't like what he sees. In an interview with Bobby Kotick, former CEO of Activision Blizzard, he tells a story of when Chris Metzen returned to Blizzard and took a look at the planned story for World of Warcraft.
He calls me, he had seen like the 2 expansion plans, and he called me, he's like, they're not good, man. They need to be redone. And I'm like, just come do it. Like, you're the guy, come do it.
September 26th, 2022, Chris Metzen fully rejoins Blizzard as the executive creative director. Then in the fall of 2023, Steve Denuser quietly leaves Blizzard, stating that it was because of the work-from-home policy at Blizzard being restricted and that he's looking for a change. BlizzCon 2023. Chris Metzen announces the World Soul Saga, a trilogy of expansions with a cohesive story that will not only close this chapter of the past 20 years of Warcraft's story, but set the universe up for the next 20 years.
A storyline that in almost every way feels like the culmination of the first 20 years of our storytelling. A storyline, provided we do our jobs, we do the thing that will vector us into the next 20 years of adventure.
But how is that possible? How can the World Soul Saga vector Warcraft into the next 20 years of adventure, and how is this trilogy different from every other expansion?
Okay, the War Within Midnight, and the Last Titan's not out, so I'm not going to give an opinion on it, right? The Last Titan can be cool. It can be. We don't know what's going to happen with it. The Void, personally, I hate the Void. It's annoying. The Void should have been old gods instead of just glowing blue creatures, by all means. It should have been abomination type creatures. I like them. You know, where you got like you've got like the demons and stuff like that, by all kind of sense. That makes sense. But like you got creatures that are corrupted, like Void Walkers and all that type of shit. Those Void Lords, blah blah blah, right? But the abominations like Cthulhu, Yogg-Saron, and all that type of stuff, they're like sent out to be like tapeworms for the world, right? And every planet they send them off to, they corrupt it. They make the world, which is meant to be an egg. You know, if you look at like Azeroth is just a giant egg for the creature within, as such. And they're there to kind of just corrupt and control. And they look ugly. They're hideous. They've got tentacles everywhere. They're just ugly things. I like the Void in that sense, but I don't like the Void in I shoot purple beams. And that's it. Nighttime. I don't like the Void like that. It doesn't feel as... I don't know. It doesn't feel new. It seems just boring and generic. The War Within, for me, terrible. I thought the War Within, terrible. Midnight has got promise, but it has failed me in other systems and all these other things. Microtransactions, blah, blah, blah. The world is way too big. This is a Warcraft problem at the moment. The world is way too big. There's a lot more problems going on that make Midnight worse. The Last Titan might be the ending of this trilogy. You've got orange, bluey purple, and now you got some light yellow, right? The last Titan might be some sort of holy thing, you know. They kind of contrast each other. So let's hope that this Last Titan finishes off the problem with these current 3 expansions. I am not going to play Midnight unless they release something great, or they make Arator the raid boss. I will play it and I will kill Arator. I'll happily do that. I don't care, because he's a boring character. But the War Within, the Last Titan, I feel like it's going to be better than the War Within. So this could be a progressive thing.
Aftermath of whatever is waiting for us at the end of the World Soul Saga is what I believe to be a soft reboot for the universe. But before they do that, Blizzard needs to wind up a haymaker punch of story decisions that is going to take years to make contact. And really, Since Dragonflight, they've been concluding storylines and setting them up with an established baseline to cleanly introduce future lore that isn't mired in ancient context from past expansions. There's the reclamation of Gilneas, the retirement of Gen Greymane, and his daughter Tess becoming the new leader, the World Tree of Belemeth, Tyrande and Malfurion retiring, and Chandris being the new leader. Kalecgos reuniting the Blue Dragonflight, Magni not being Azeroth's speaker anymore, killing off Gallywix and establishing the Undermine Council. The Kirin Tor becoming a decentralized faction, finally establishing a connection between brokers and ethereals, addressing the true nature of the Shadowlands, uncovering the Titan conspiracy and their plans for Azeroth, introducing new characters like Dagran and Eretor. In their plans for Azeroth, introducing new characters like Dagran and Eretor.
These characters suck. For what not to do when it comes to making a character, don't make these. Don't make these. Please. This guy is an abomination to dwarves, by all means. And this guy is just what Anduin... This is Anduin without a cool dad. This is what Eretor is. He's a half-elf Anduin without a cool dad. If Anduin's dad wasn't cool as fuck, Anduin would have been a worse character. He basically would have been Eretor. His biggest gripe is I've got two types of sides within me and I don't know what to do. Like, that's it. That's literally it. That's literally, there's nothing else about it. He's got nothing else to worry about.
Establishing new threats like the Arathi Empire. And probably the most important storyline is the reunification of elves and the creation of the Dawnwell.
Okay, you know what? If they release Warcraft 4, I'm going to say this, hopefully, in hindsight, this might be a good thing. In hindsight, this might be a good thing. I'm going to say it right now. If they make Warcraft 4, and then you've got, like, the joined up elves, the humans, the current day Horde, I guess, the Alliance, the Horde, and then you've got, like, specific types of other factions. Okay, I could say this is a top tier thing, you know? This is a top tier thing. But, a big but, I don't like that everything's friendly within World of Warcraft. Well, within Warcraft itself. It makes no sense. It makes actually no sense.
Because the lore surrounding the elves in Quel'Thalas is the longest run-on sentence of lore in the universe that needed to return back to a status quo so future stories can be told which don't rely on the context of decades of fragmented lore. All a new player needs to understand now is that in the northern eastern kingdoms, there's a place called Quel'Thalas. It's filled with magical elves. There are a couple different types of them with different cultures, and that's it. You don't need to know what happened in the Burning Crusade, or the Mists of Pandaria, or the Battle for Azeroth. This is a fresh slate that stories can be built upon. And that isn't to say this is an erasure of Warcraft's story. This is an attempt to finally put some punctuation at the end of these run-on sentences. And if Warcraft is going to have a well-told story, it needs to build a foundation for these new stories to be told.
We cannot greet the future without saying farewell to the past.
Okay, see, I don't like that, because the whole exciting thing about life is history and learning from history. And once you do something that makes the rest of the history of the world obsolete, the rest of the world is obsolete. And this is a problem we've had within World of Warcraft. The Barons is now obsolete. Mankrik is now obsolete. The Quillbores now obsolete. The Trolls obsolete. The Taurens obsolete. The High Mountain obsolete. Everything becomes obsolete apart from current day events. And if you look at the history of the world, this is what happens. People don't care about history. They don't care about what's going on over here, why that happens, to cause this event, to cause that event, why this was an original point, and why now that's where we're going. No one does that because history repeats itself. So it becomes unauthentic, and I don't like that. I don't like that. You can't greet the future without studying the past. That's the fucking truth, and it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because for elves who live longer, smarter, better, way more agile, this is dumb for them to say. Now, putting putting your anger aside for the greater good, that would make sense. If it was for the greater good, for the greater good, for the greater good, okay, I get it. That would make way more sense. Oh, for the Sunwell. Like if they all just went, it's for the magic, it'd be cool. They were like, they're here because they're elves. They're addictive. They've got addictive personalities. It's been the thing within all of elf history. But now it's just like, don't worry about it. And it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel right. Again, in hindsight, if they make a Warcraft 4 and there's an elf-based thing, this might be good. But I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Now, what I'm not saying is that the story of the reunification of the elves and the cinematics that come with it are some master art of storytelling.
Okay.
Because it's really not.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that from a holistic point of view, this shows that WoW's writers have diagnosed one of the major pain points for this legacy universe and are taking steps to rectify it, and that there's a clear long-term investment for the franchise, which can currently be seen in every facet of the game's design, from gameplay to story.
Okay.
In 2008, World of Warcraft Comic Volume 1 was released. This collection of Warcraft comics included a foreword from Chris Metzen talking about how his love for comics heavily influenced the Warcraft universe.
Yes.
While Warcraft is a high-octane swords and sorcery setting, I don't think it's any secret that its unique flavor is steeped heavily in comics lore. It's absolutely saturated by the colorful themes and motifs that continually play out in the complex yet glorious universes inhabited by our favorite spandex-clad heroes.
You know what? This is refreshing because I like comics. Now, I don't read comics like almost at all, but I like the comic book versus, shows. I used to watch obviously comic book shows, and obviously there's films and all these other things, right? Like comic book games or comic book based games, Marvel, DC, and actually I follow a lot of people on stuff like Instagram, which are content creators that are now making their own comics. I like this type of stuff, and it makes sense why I'm into things like comics, Warcraft, even things like D&D, and obviously Warhammer. Like Warhammer, less so. I would love to jump into Warhammer. I don't have a big knowledge of Warhammer, but I know a very small amount. Things like Lord of the Rings as well. I feel like they're all interconnected. I feel like they're all. This is why my base is World of Warcraft. And then they've got a hint of almost all these different things. There's a hint of Lord of the Rings. There's a hint of Warhammer. There's a hint of comic books. It does fit. And obviously, World of Warcraft making their own stories in their own comics or novels or whatever they are, it makes way more sense.
I know. You might
it.
be wondering what magical broadswords and demon-forged fell reavers have to do with secret identities and skin-tight costumes.
Damn.
A few examples pop into mind. Chris goes on to talk about how Captain America was the inspiration for the vibe of Warcraft Paladins.
Yeah.
Alex Ross's mythical renderings of Superman in Kingdom Come and Justice influenced the Draenei's heroic poses and animation sets.
That makes sense.
The dreaming from Sandman and the green from the Swamp Thing helped shape the lore of the Emerald Dream.
Oh.
But the most impactful comic book inspiration for Warcraft was The Mighty Thor by Walt Simonson and Saul Buscema. He goes on to mention that the Burning Legion and Sargeras are just riffs off the demons Surtur and Muspelheim, and Thrall's Doomhammer is just heavily inspired by Mjolnir.
And Thor is known for being a one-handed, one-hammered weapon wielder majority of the time. Or he has a big axe. Right? Which is a two-hand. Now, there might be times where he wears both. But never in my life have I seen an enhancement shaman go, hey, we need to have two-hand or one-hand, and that is it. We don't dual wield. This is why enhancement shamans need to have one hand or two-handed weapons. No dual wield. This makes sense because of Thor. Thank you very much. And also
the very foundation of Warcraft's lore is soaked in inspiration from comics. But the similarities between the two go even farther than that.
Yep.
Legacy comics develop into incredibly long-running mediums of storytelling. For these stories to be sustainable, they practically require resets for its story, or it will be suffocated in information that make them impossible to get into.
Are we gonna have a World of Warcraft reset in lore? Are we gonna do that?
For DC Universe, they implement entire resets to their universe
I wouldn't mind
frequently.
that.
For Marvel, they section off their
Like a
long-running
Sundering,
narrative
but-
in story arcs created by specific writers. When a new arc starts, it's typically a great opportunity for new readers to pick up the series. And that right there is what WoW is working towards. Wrapping up this disconnected story that has been told for 20 years and establish a new era. A new era unburdened by a suffocating amount of context so that good stories can be told. And
Okay, I have a theory. A flump theory is back. A flump theory is back. World of Warcraft is going to have a sundering of time, a sundering of the universe, whatever it is. Illidan's going to come back, and he's going to be the chosen one. And he will fight whatever we need to fight, because we don't know yet. And there's going to be the World of Warcraft Reset expansion. And at the end of that expansion, it resets to a new era. It goes back to a certain time, things are different, and they start their wave of new. World of Warcraft 2. But this time they don't call it World of Warcraft 2, they call it Azeroth. Because what is one thing that they said? They kind of wished it wasn't called World of Warcraft, because it doesn't feel... sorry, it doesn't feel right, or something like that, right? It feels too aggressive for a lot of players. Some weird thing like that, right? No one likes it. So they're going to call it Azeroth, or something of the sort, right? And then they're going to release Classic Plus, and that will be your World of Warcraft. Classic Plus will be World of Warcraft Plus. So you're going to have retail, which is just going to be called Azeroth, a brand new game. So when people say retail, you go, excuse me, don't you mean Azeroth? And then when we have World of Warcraft, it's going to be Classic Plus. Changing the way people think about the game. I fixed it. I finished World of Warcraft. I finished the lore. If this doesn't happen, I must be an idiot.
in order to make this goal a reality, the World Soul Saga has awkward, ugly moments where it's trying to wrap up the remnants of legacy lore to set the universe up for success in the long term. And it's not perfect in the slightest, but it shows that Blizzard has diagnosed these major pain points with Warcraft's story and are taking major swings to help rectify them.
Yep.
My
Like I do believe that it's going to take longer for them to fix it than they are going to destroy it. Do you know what I mean? Like they've done a lot of things that are bad. Shadowlands, for example, Warlords of Draenor, the way they dealt with N'Zoth. They're going to have to take a few expansions to fix the lore. Because when you add one bad thing, it's going to take you an expansion to fix that. So if there's a whole expansion that's ruined, it's going to take 2 expansions to fix that one bad expansion. And if you think about it, Dragonflight, it had a lot of problems by all means. But there were some okay stuff, right? There were some okay stuff. I did some of the Dragonflight lore. I played the game. But it got boring quick. That's a system thing. That's not necessarily a story thing. So, like, I don't know. It's going to take a few times. It's going to take a few tries to fix it. And every one little mistake adds to the pile of mistakes that they have to fix. So, who knows where they're going? Who knows where they're going?
our dear hope is that you can see when it comes to WoW storytelling, we ain't screwing around. We are playing for all the marbles. We are working to establish a thundering heartbeat for this franchise.
But Metzen, what about the sword and Silphus? Please.
What sword?
We're halfway through the saga. It hasn't been talked about at all. Anything?
What was that? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, like the lore of World of Warcraft is going to be crazy. Blizzard lost touch with the players. Not necessarily. The players will change. I am an exception to the rule. I am an exception to the rule. Like a lot of content creators are exceptions to the rule. Just for the fact that majority of players don't play World of Warcraft. And even those who like, yeah, I play World of Warcraft. I'm the best warrior on a server. You don't play it. You're not the same. You play Dungeon Simulator. You play Raid Simulator. You don't play World of Warcraft. And that's the difference. Like, it's like me saying I'm a comic book fan, never reading a comic book, and just watching the films. I'm not a comic book fan, but I like comics. I appreciate them. But I watch the films and the shows. That's what I do. Right? That's as far... Maybe games. I don't read them. So, Dungeon Simulator and using World of Warcraft ain't the same as playing the game, understanding the lore, researching the lore, diving yourself into the universe. Because that's what I want. I want more people to be in the open world. I want, if they do something like Classic Plus, I want them to take the old school aesthetic of the world, put it in retail, give retail the hard raids. I don't care about that. I'm okay with doing the hard content, but it's the stuff before the end game that needs to be built. And if they can't get the lore right, that stuff's going to feel empty anyway. I don't like how they did with the trolls. The trolls used to be an aggressive, bloodthirsty character. Now, if they made the elves friendly, okay, cool. But the trolls are known for being a tribal pact of people that will kind of shutter in everyone else. There weren't really any troll/orc characters, right? Now the ogres and orcs have people like Rexar, who are half orc, half ogre. The elves and the humans have half elf, half human characters like Arator. So that makes sense. But if your thing is very new, they're less likely gonna just join someone unless they've built a pact on them and they've become friends after a great event. And it's just, I don't know, they're still going to feel some way. The Zandalari trolls. The Zandalari trolls were the high kings and queens of trolls. They were the beloved. Everyone looked at them. So why would they join the Horde and go, oh my god, we just won? It wouldn't make sense. That's what they've built their entire culture on, the classist system. That's what they do. That's okay to have these differences. That's what the lore needs to dive in on. But this is a great video. Yes, I do think that Chris Metzen might still be a bit burnt out, right? And obviously him being into comics, these things can always just dive and change, right? As long as people don't just become Superman and he's got no weaknesses and destroys everything, it should be perfectly fine. But the War Within, been a big miss for me. Midnight, I feel like Midnight was better than the War Within. But there's nothing else to it, you know? I feel like there's nothing else to it. Like, there used to be lore videos, even in Shadowlands, about like speculations and theory crafting about where the lore's gonna go. Like, I don't think you're gonna get any of this now. I actually don't think you're gonna get any of it. And it's 2D. The lore at the moment feels 2D. There's no extra levels to it. There's no extra layers. It's kind of weird. Yes, the trilogy thing can be a good thing in the future of World of Warcraft. If they do another trilogy, it might be a good thing. But I feel like there's going to be a sundering, and it'll reset everything. It will reset everything. Like, the last Titan spawns, and then she goes, "Oh, creatures of my world, Azeroth, what is one wish I can grant you?" And they're like, "We want to reset." And then they go, "WoW 2, boom. It's called Azeroth, though. Azerothians," or something like that. I think that's the way it's gonna go. I think that's the way it's gonna go. But yeah, it is a cool little thing. I do appreciate like a lot of Warcraft lore, and like the history of World of Warcraft has always been like a hot topic, because everyone likes different things. They do. I like different things than what you're gonna like. It's just the way it is. Not everyone is into the same stuff.